So this is my first video like this, and I thought I would talk about possibly the rarest and most annoying engine in my collection. This being my Athearn 462 locomotive by Athearn produced. Now if you're a little confused, well, let me tell you, I was before, but here's the history on this engine and why it's so rare. So in 1961, Athearn decided, hey, let's just make a whole bunch of steam locomotives. So they did, producing the Pacific Steam Switcher and the Little Monster locomotive. The Pacifics came in both Boston, Maine, ATSF, and the Baltimore and Ohio version I have with me right now to talk about later. The 060s, being the rarest of all these steam locomotives, was featured in the Southern Pacific number 1272, and for the Pennsylvania Railroad being number 4114. These engines are extremely rare and hard to find. And finally being the Little Monster, which is the least rarest engine and pretty much the only one to actually work. I'll get back to that a little bit later in the video. Actually, about now. The reasons why this engine failed so bad and made them hard is because they absolutely sucked. They had a terrible plastic drive and that just kind of affected them. However, due to this, the Little Monster was the best performing, which it did last longer, but it still didn't last out. So I have one of these locomotives, and I like to talk about it. I have the Baltimore and Ohio 462, and I want to tell you why it was the hardest engine to work on. So here's that crappy drive system I was telling you about. When you unscrew the engine and you take away this weight in the background, you will find the terrible plastic gears, which would drive these terrible plastic driving wheels. This does really affect the engine a lot in performance. The only metal wheels to be on the engine is the tender wheels, which are the only wheels that pick up power instead of just on the engine itself. And while editing this video and doing research for it, I figured out that the prototypes for the Pacifics and possibly the other engines were supposed to be band driven. So now the big question is, would I recommend this to people? Yes and no. If you're wanting to restore this engine, don't. But if you want a good rare engine in your collection, get it. And that's my video on the Athearn steam locomotives from 1961. Hope you enjoyed.